This Tuesday, if you guys aren't already aware, the Glacite tunnels have been released to the main server. And since the release, I've seen so much confusion from people asking what to do and how to progress properly. So today I want to go over a few tips and tricks to get you guys started and hopefully get you guys to finishing this update. Without wasting any more time though, let's get into the video. I want to start relatively simple and talk about cold. Cold, if you're not familiar, happens whenever you enter the Glacite tunnels. On the right side of your screen, you'll see your cold start going up over time. The cold is really bad as once you lose one cold, you'll start losing mining speed, and every 25 cold, your speed will start going down by 100. So how can you combat this then? Well, it's actually really simple. The first thing you want to do is either buy or forge the travel scroll to the Dwarven base camp. The recipe for this isn't too expensive or even hard to manually grind, so it's even good for Ironmen. This way, if you're far into the tunnels and you start losing cold, you could simply warp, which I have a keybind set to it, and I'll go and reset all my cold. As you can see in chat, the warp of the campfire reduced your cold to 0. But this gets even better if you have more money to spend. And that's because you could get the Tactical Insertion. This ability marks the location and teleports you back after 3 seconds. The reason this is useful as normally if you just warp to the base camp, you can't go back to where you were before warping. This, on the other hand, you could set your location, warp back here, and then reset your cold back where you were originally mining. As a proof of concept, I'm in the Aquamarine part of the Glacite tunnels, which is probably the farthest you could actually get. And to kind of prove the point, all I'm going to do is right click on the Tactical Insertion, warp to the base camp, resetting my cold, and then I warp back here. Which saves you a ton of time if you're going for max powder and Heart of the Mountain. The only downside is this item's around 130 mil in the auction house, so it's not very affordable, but worst case scenario you just sell it back, as it is really useful. Another really basic thing about this update is the Forge. Now the Forge has existed since the Dwarven mine, so each mining update they keep adding newer and newer Forge items. The reason this is so important is because it brings such an opportunity to make money, especially on the first few days of the update. For example, just looking in the Forger, we could see some items, such as like the Umber plate, the Tungsten plate, or even just a refined version of them. As a little proof of concept going into the bazaar, I'm able to buy order the things to make one refined Umber for only under 1,000,000 coins. And well, after around a 4-hour forge time, assuming you have quick forge maxed, you'll be looking at a near 4 times profit for AFKing, and keep in mind you'll have 5 forge slots, so the amount of AFK money is pretty good. Not to mention if you have like the Umber collection max to have the Umber plate recipe, that makes even more money. With current rates, you could probably make around 25 mil an hour just AFKing. So before the prices get too low, I would recommend trying to push for the recipes and make as much money as you can. Another great thing that's helped me out while grinding this update is waypoints. As you might have seen in the previous clips, I have waypoints all around the tunnels that tell me where each gemstone is. This is really important as the caves are kind of confusing. There's no well, it's not as simple as like the Dwarven mines where you could easily map stuff out. There's a lot of turns and random dead ends that you might encounter. So having a waypoint to each gemstone that you need really saves time. You won't be needing the waypoints the whole time, but they are definitely really good training wheels to kind of get a route in your mind to where you need to go for each gemstone, as well as it reminds you of the name if you aren't used to them yet. Sadly, I can't link you the ones that I'm currently using, but they aren't even the best ones, as well as the fact that they aren't hard to make. Simply just make a few laps around the tunnels, find the parts of the mines that have these certain gemstones, and just mark them up in mods like SBE or Skytills. I think it's about time to get into mineshafts. Mineshafts are another part of this mining update that appear whenever mining any type of ore, whether that's mithril or glacite or any gemstone. First, I want to go over the fact that you should not be mining hardstone or mithril to spawn mineshafts. Now, this wasn't put in the official patch notes, it was made in a smaller patch notes a few days later, but mineshafts have a weighted spawn chance from breaking ores. I'll throw up a screenshot on the screen if you want to pause, but I'll read it out quickly. Breaking any hardstone will have a 1 in 20,000 chance to spawn a mineshaft. Mining glacite, umber, tungsten, or any gemstone has a 1 in 1,000 chance. Mithril has a 1 in 2,000 chance, and finally titanium has a 1 in 500 chance. The Glacite tunnel specific commissions don't require you to mine mithril or titanium and even a hardstone at all. Not to mention, even if they were better, you shouldn't focus only getting mineshafts, as you will max out the bestiary and anything else just simply by passively mining for commissions. This also brings up my point that the mineshafts are also not that useful. But I'll quickly go over to you and tell you why these mineshafts are really something you shouldn't be excited for. Firstly, let's talk about the frozen corpses. The types of corpses you're able to get are the lapis one, the umber corpse, the tungsten corpse, and finally the Vanguard. Out of these, the lapis one doesn't require you to use a key, which makes them fine. I've seen them give up to 30,000 Glacite powder. They also give some of the umber and tungsten keys. Now the lapis one isn't a problem, but more the tungsten and the umber ones. Firstly, the keys are really expensive, coming at around 5 million coins a pop. These corpses sadly don't really give anything special. They just give increased loot that already can be dropped from the lapis miner. But even though it's increased loot, not only does it barely increase the powder that you get, but definitely does not make your money back in any way. Furthering this point is the Vanguard. This is a special type of corpse you only see in one of the mine shafts, but, well, firstly, the key as of recording is 70 mil on the bazaar. Next, the Vanguard only has one item that is extremely rare to get, and I mean extremely, being a 1 in 320 drop chance. And this is a Shattered Locket. The Shattered Locket can be used to make this necklace called the Pendant of the Vaughn. You're able to put a jade and an amber slot on it. It gives 25 base mining fortune and 100 mining speed, along with some cold resistance, which is not really useful after the last trick I showed, as well as some pristine while in the mine shafts. The only issue with this thing is that, sure, it's way better than the current rift necklace that people are using because of the glistening reforge, but nowhere near the amount that the keys are worth total. Assuming that you're paying the current price of skeleton keys, which is 68 mil, and you're on drop chance with the 1 in 320, you're looking at spending close to 22 billion coins on just a necklace. Another stat we could look at is how many have already been opened. Looking at the bazaar, there's been 1.5k insta-buys for this, along with 320 insta-sells, meaning there's around 1.8 keys in circulation, maybe more, some people might have not sold them. But the point I'm getting to is there's only been one locket drop on the server so far, which is incredibly unlucky. I've opened a few of these myself, probably close to 10 keys, and the loot I've gotten is horrible, so I would definitely not recommend using the skeleton keys and just any keys in general when down in the mine shafts. Something you should do in the mine shafts is have a party. Mine shafts have a limit from 1 player to 8 players being in there, and the mine shafts makes for pretty good cooperative gameplay. Firstly, let's talk about the bestiary. There are 4 different mobs that come inside the new bestiary. If you aren't already aware, there'll be the Glacite Mutt, the Mage, the Caver, and the Bowman. Now, I didn't max these bestiaries all on my own, but rather with my guild. All we did is we had 8 or even more of us farming mine shafts. We would G-party whenever one of us got them, and we would loot share. The way we figured out to do it the best, there might be better methods, but it worked out pretty consistently for us. And what I'll show on screen is we walked around using weapons like a Fire Veil, or a Spirit Scepter, or a Hyperion, just to do a little damage, as they are damage capped from anything that isn't like a drill or a pickaxe. And basically the whole idea is you want everyone in your party to go around and just get a hit or 2 on each mob so you get kill credit. Then you have the spawner of the mineshaft go in after a few seconds, follow the path everyone else took, and kill the mobs that have already been hit by the party members. This bestiary is awful to max otherwise, so if that is an intention for you, I'd definitely recommend this. You'll see many people in top guilds doing this, as well as just in lobbies I've seen many people recruiting people for mineshaft parties, so they aren't impossible to find. Another thing that you should do in every mineshaft is get your scrap. The suspicious scrap, which I'll go on in just a little bit, currently is worth around 1 mil on the bazaar, and you're able to drop anywhere from 2 to 3 per mineshaft, but not in the way people think. Mining mithril or titanium in the mineshafts will only give you 1, while mining Glacite, Umber, Tungsten, or any gemstones will give you the chance to get 2 or 3. Pair that with the Heart of the Mountain perk that increases your chance to find a scrap while mining. Along with the Enchant Paleontologist, it isn't that bad to find a suspicious scrap in each mineshaft. Another thing you might notice in mineshafts is the fact that your AOTV is disabled. The AOTV is what everyone uses for movement, and we have to resort to some of the old school items that we used to use way back then, like the grappling hook and both the leaping and the silk edge sword. Thankfully you don't need to move a lot in the mineshafts, but other than these items you can't use anything like an ender bow or ender pearls, really anything. So when you're going up the ladder or trying to make some hard jump to get out of an awkward spot in the mineshaft, these are really useful. And probably to the most important parts, the Heart of the Mountain and the fossils. First of all, let's go over the Heart of Mountain tree. I'll be going over the tree that I've been using so far to commission grind, which has been optimized. Firstly, for the bottom tree, I have some basics like mining speed and fortune. I have mining speed boost unlocked, as well as efficient miner, which is extremely useful down here. As well as I'm extended all the way to Sky Mall, as these buffs do work inside the glacial tunnels. Something you could do and might be better is not get Sky Mall and rather get Picobulus. I say this whether it's a bug or not, you're able to swap between your mining speed boost as well as your pick and nimbus cooldown separately. And throwing one of these Pickobuluses is able to pretty much finish a commission for you. Do keep in mind, by the way, I am Peak of the Mountain 10 along with Heart of the Mountain 10, which gives me 2 extra Heart of the Mountain tokens. So if you ever need to, for example, get rid of a few tokens, you might want to get rid of something like Sky Mall or Quick Forge. Anyway, moving up in tier 6, I have Professional, Mole, and Fortune unlocked. I have Mining Speed Boost, Powder Buff, and Mining Fortune maxed out. And the perks I have maxed out in this little U-shape is No Stone Unturned, Strong Arm, Daily Grind, Sub-Zero Mining, Dead Man's Chest, Frozen Solid, Gifts from the Departed, Surveyor, and Warm-Hearted. Out of these, Surveyor is definitely the one you want the most, as finding mine shafts is something you want to focus on for the bestiary, as it isn't super easy to max. Warm-Hearted isn't that useful. Daily Grind isn't horrible, but early on it is kind of a waste of powder. Strong Arm isn't too useful, but if you have extra powder, I would put it in here. No Stone Unturned is kind of useful. Gifts from the Departed is also not that bad. Though it's only 20% at level 100, you will occasionally see yourself get a few things like a bunch of powder and maybe even things like blue goblin eggs just from this perk. I have Frozen Solid, which is I was kind of forced to get in order to get Dead Man's Chest, which gives a 50% chance to give you an additional frozen corpse inside of a mine shaft, which is the most useful by far. Well, after Surveyor. And the 2 perks that I'm not using, because I'm not fossil grinding, is Excavator and Dust Collector. Excavator is really useful as when using the scraps, not only are the fossils the best way to make your money back from them, but especially if you're only going for the fossils, suspicious scraps are kind of expensive, so you would want to get as quick as possible. And fossil dust isn't that useful, but you might as well have it maxed out. Which finally brings me here into the Fossil Research Center. The first thing I want to go over is Dr. Stone. She gives you the opportunity to donate 8 different fossils, and donating a fossil actually gives you rewards, like powder, Heart of the Mountain XP, mining XP, and something I would recommend, as it isn't urgent to max her out, is by waiting for a 2x powder to start before claiming your fossils. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you get 30k powder for donating it after Heart of the Mountain 10, which, if you do the math, you'll get close to 500k powder if you wait for it 2 times. And you submit all the fossils right then. Now, let's get on to the most important part in my opinion, and kind of the confusing if you don't know what you're doing, which is the Excavator. The way the Excavator works is you put in a suspicious scrap along with a chisel. If you aren't familiar with the chisels, you could have the basic one, which you get by just talking to Dr. Stone, the reinforced chisel, the Glacite chisel, and the perfect chisel. The difference between this is you could put more gemstone slots on, as well as the charges go up, which means the amount of times you could click. Now, once again, the method for this update for maxing powder, of course, isn't mining, because why would it ever be? But instead, it's just by doing the Excavator. Now, the rates on the Excavator are really hard to tell, and I say this as sometimes you'll go from getting a pocket of 37k powder to only getting 1k powder, but as kind of like a reference point, my friend Deathstreaks was able to get 1.3 million powder in just a 2x powder event, which is actually insane, and makes this powder really easy to max if you have the money for it. Something I am going to recommend if you do this is have SBE. If you aren't aware, SBE is a $5 mod that you could buy, which gives you not only Fossil Solver, but faster Fossil Solver. Now, the fossils do take a little longer if you go out of your way to sell them and even get them in the Excavator, but hey, it's so much better than commission mining, so if your goal is to max the powder, this is the best way. But honestly, I think that's about it for the tips and tricks. This update is relatively small, so there's not like as much as, for example, there were on the Dwarven Mines release or Crystal Hollows. But in my opinion, in the past few days, this update hasn't been that good, but I did have a decent time just hanging out with friends and doing mine shafts. If there's any type of tips and tricks that I may have forgotten about that you might actively use on this update, feel free to comment them. As well, if I didn't answer any questions, feel free to comment them as well. I'll try to be as active as I can in the comment section. But yeah, that's about it. See ya.